Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this month's national call. We are so excited to have you here for this very special edition of our monthly call. We have a very special guest speaker today who our executive director, Vanessa McCullers, is going to be in conversation with. And, it's now been a year since we've been living this pandemic life. It's also Women's History Month, so we really wanted to have a powerful woman speaker today. And sadly, it's also the 1 year anniversary of the murder of Breonna Taylor. And so we just want to acknowledge that and honor her life. And our speaker today is actually activist, mom extraordinaire Tamika Mallory, and she is there in Louisville actually preparing for the rally as we speak to acknowledge and, bring light, continue to shed light as she's been doing all along on the tragic murder of Breonna Taylor. So I am going to leave it there and pass it on to Vanessa McCullers, our executive director, who will be having a mom to mom chat with Tamika. Tamika is also a mom of a son. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that and just more on her dynamic life. And we are just so pleased to have you here, Tamika. Thank you so much for doing this, especially on this extremely busy weekend. We know I think you're going from Kentucky to the Grammys, right? So it's an extremely busy weekend for you. And we just thank you so much for being here. My son is just getting back from basketball. So I'm going to on video, off video, and let him in the house. And you all start, and I'll be right back. But thank you so much.
Thanks,
Okay.
Tapelsha.
Thank you, Pausha.
Well, good morning, sis. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm so glad to be having this conversation with you. So honored that you were able to take the time out on this really busy weekend. As you know, we've talked about and I've shared. I really want to just have a mom to mom, sis to sis conversation about how you even just traverse this life of being a social justice leader and being a mom, having so much visibility on you and expectations and responsibilities. So with that said, today, and we know Depelsha just said it marks the 1 year anniversary of Breonna Taylor's shooting, and I know that I remember distinctly hearing your voice really loud and clear around that specific incident very early on. Share with us what this last year has been like for you.
Well, first of all, let me just say two things. Excuse the noise that's in the background. It is the 1 year anniversary today of Breonna Taylor's murder, and we are having a rally that is going to take place just shortly. And so, therefore, there's a lot of folks gathering, people coming from out of town. As with any time that Black folks we experience loss, the family gathers, and
Yeah.
so we have activists who have flown in from all over the country. Tamika Palmer, Breonna's mother, and her family members and others have gathered this morning to break bread together before attending the rally. And so, excuse the noise. You can't keep a group of Black people quiet. So especially when we're eating, right? So that's one. The other thing I want to say is thank you, not just for having me on today, but for the work that you all have continued to do. I've been watching since day one, and I know the commitment that it takes to keep people together. And as the mother of a Black boy, who's now 22 years, he'll be 22 in 2 weeks. And he's now turning into a young Black man, but he's always going to be mama's boy. I know how important it is to have spaces like the one that you all have created to ensure that we have a place to tap in as Black mothers, because it is very, very difficult to raise these young Black men. So I want to say thanks. And of course, thank you so much for putting up with me and having the patience and everything else to move the time and do all the things to accommodate this crazy life that God has granted me with, and that I take pride, honor, and very seriously. So that's one part of it. In terms of your question about 1 year later, right? What has it been like? I haven't slept a good night's sleep definitely in a year. Breonna Taylor's story rocked my soul. I came here to Louisville 8 months ago, I believe. It was, yeah, about 8 months. It was in May. So I don't know. I guess that's actually 10 months ago. We didn't know, the world didn't know that Breonna Taylor was murdered until until late May. Meanwhile, she had been dead for 2 months, and her family was doing all that they could to get some attention, some, national spotlight on her. Attorney Lanita Baker, who is a local attorney in Louisville, had been working with the family, and also she had, a very close relationship to Ben Crump, attorney Ben Crump. So she called him and she asked him to help her and to become a part of the legal team. And Ben did what he always does, which is to call many of us as activists and really raise the issue that there's a Black woman who's been killed in Louisville. And it was right after Ahmaud Arbery was killed. And so he was basically saying, we need to run with Ahmaud for sure, but we have to stand up for Breonna Taylor. And he asked me to do something from wherever. And by the way, I live in New York City. And so at this time, it's a national pandemic, the worst city of all in terms of how New York was hit. We were shut down, literally. My mom had had a stroke. She was partially paralyzed out of nowhere. All of these things happening at once. And when Ben Crump called and told me the story of Breonna Taylor, I decided that we were going to break quarantine and go and come to Louisville. We did. We came, and yep. Sorry, excuse me. I'm doing a panel right now. Just please don't lose it. I'm sorry, guys. It's in real time around here. This is my computer. I need it. My computer's dying. Sorry. Have to ask Linda. I'm sorry. So, or Angelo, my son. So I was saying that that I've decided to break quarantine. So we came down. What we wanted to do was, we knew that just sort of making phone calls or trying to Zoom and, do a live conversation wasn't going to be enough. It wasn't going to, because already at this point, sorry, I need to close the door. Excuse me.
This is all real time, a window into Tamika's life on a daily basis.
Yeah, sorry. People are looking for charges. There's a bunch of things going on. But anyway, we knew that that obviously someone had made a decision that they did not want to tell the story of Breonna Taylor, right? We knew that. And so trying to do sort of conversations from home, it wasn't going to be enough. We actually had to put our feet on the ground in Louisville to try to help bring attention from here. One thing I knew, though, is that in a pandemic, people would at least be paying attention to, whatever we were saying, right? Folks would be watching us, that you guys would actually be at home. And if we went live from Louisville, you would say, okay, well, what happened there? And be open to listening to the story. So that's why we decided, let's go to Louisville. While we were here, we met Tamika Palmer, Breonna's mother, and she jokes all the time that she and I spell our names Tamika. Never can you find that. Usually if I meet another Tamika, her name is Tameekaica. There's so many different variations of the way we spell it, but we actually spell our names exactly the same. And she and I, we started talking when we first met, and she said, how do you spell your name? And she said, okay, you must be a real one. I never forget that conversation. First day we met, she said, you must be a real one. And she began to weep that someone showed up. People had not been showing up. Imagine what it's like that your child was killed in her home. It's been 2.5 months and the whole world is silent. But meanwhile, other people have been killed and the world is all over it, right? Even watching the movement that was amazing around Ahmaud Arbery, she must have been feeling like, please, someone pay attention to my daughter. And so we had a rally and we did some other activities. And I told her that I would be back. I promised her. I met Kenneth Walker, her daughter's boyfriend, who fired the warning shot inside the home to try to protect Breonna and the home. And we had, and in fact, Kenny Walker was inside of his house. He wasn't outside at the rallies with us. We had to go to his house because he still had an ankle bracelet on and he was on house arrest. So we went to visit him and his mother and his family, sat with them, talked with them. As we were getting ready to leave Louisville coming home, George Floyd was murdered on camera. We made a decision not to go back to New York, but to drive 10 and a half hours from Louisville to Minneapolis. When we got to Minneapolis the first day, there was a lot of tension, of course, a lot of pain. But by that night, the city was on fire. And we happened to be out in the street with those people who were out there protesting. Mm-hmm. We were hit with tear gas, rubber bullets. I mean, we were in the middle of what looked like ground zero. The next decision that we made was that we had to use the national and international attention around George Floyd to bring attention to Breonna Taylor. Isn't it crazy that we need to use the murder of a Black man to try to cover a Black woman who could not get her story told? But we used it, and we made a strategic plan. Our strategic step was for us to link these two things together so that we could give life to both stories at the same time. And George Floyd's family said, please do that. Every time we say George Floyd, we will also say Breonna Taylor. From that day, we never stopped. In fact, we moved to Kentucky because of the pandemic, because we did not want to bring the coronavirus back to our families by traveling and shuffling back and forth. It's also very tiresome. You know this, you travel all the time. Most of the moms who are on this platform today know what it's like to have to get up in the morning, travel and do, and work once you make it to another city and turn around and leave and come right back. So we decided to leave our families. And for 4 months, we lived here in Louisville and protested basically every day. And continue to work with this community. So when you ask what it's been like for the last year, it's been nonstop. And we ended the year by deciding that we needed to, get more involved in passing Breonna's law across the country, which is the Breonna's law, is the ban on no-knock warrants, no-knock raids, which is why this actually happened to Breonna Taylor in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's what it's been like.
Yeah, I know. As we have a relationship, of course, outside of just you being a social justice leader, and I can recall many a times when we have gathered, together on behalf of you, to pray for you, to ask God to cover you, because the work that you're doing is so important, and you are so important to us. So it's funny because you're taking me through the year, and I remember all of these things very vividly. And one of the things that I remember the most is that you, the day that you had a speech, you stood up next to another dear friend and colleague of mine, Lee Merritt, at the courthouse. And this is when you declared that we were in a state of emergency. And, it's funny because I think a lot of people were thinking state of emergency. Yes, because of the pandemic, we're in a state of emergency. But specifically the words that you said, and I'll never forget this. I remember actually recording it with my phone because I was so, of course, proud of you, but just so blown away by the intensity of what you had shared. And what you shared was that we are in a state of emergency. We are not responsible for the mental illness that has been inflicted upon our people by
Yeah.
the American government, institutions, and the people who are in positions of power. Tamika, when you said those words,
Yeah.
wow, when you said those words and when you blatantly called out the targets of the world, the AutoZones of the world, these people, these companies that were, businesses that felt as though they were, under attack, if you will, what you did was you shifted the whole conversation about from social justice. This was not just something that Black people had to pay attention to. This was now something that the corporations had to pay attention to. And in my line of business, outside of working with, Mob United, I work with a lot of companies, advertisers that do branding. And to see their shift, their mental shift from this is not just a Black people problem, but our employees, some of our executives. These are the places that they live, and these are their families, You really called them to task and you made them accountable for what was happening, for them not speaking up themselves about what was happening in the world and how they could be a part of the solution. So I said all that because I want to thank you for shifting that mindset. And I want to thank you for, making corporate America not only talk about it, but put their money behind it. Never in my whole entire career of over 20 something years working in entertainment have I seen so many brands step up and have a point of view about what was happening to us, right? So with that said, I want to ask you, like, how the shift that we've seen, how does that affect you? How are you able to like balance the work of activism and the part that now capitalism is playing into this? Because now it's like a thing to support Black people and to support our movement and to support social justice.
Well, I'm not 100% sure that it's going to be long lived. So if you are someone who has the relationships and knows how to get money, raise money, you should do it and do it quickly, because we never know when these folks will say, enough is enough. Again, I'm so sorry about all of this noise that's happening. If I wasn't sitting here talking to you, I'd be in there yelling at people to shut up. So, what's funny, Vanessa? I I had no idea what I was going to say that day. I didn't get up in the morning and plan a speech, right? I just went and spoke from my heart. Everything I said was literally what was in my mind for years. But I had planned and prepared speeches so much that I would never dare to say the things that I said. Never. It's no way. If I had to sit down and rethink what I was going to speak about in that press conference that day, I probably would not have the courage in this moment to say those things. But it was clearly necessary, because what I was watching that morning, it's funny, I had an interview that morning that was supposed to be at 6 a.m. So I woke up really early, got myself together, and the interview never happened. But I was just watching the news. And as I mentioned to you, the town was burning. And that was basically what the news was all about. The smoldering that was happening across the city at different places that had been damaged and burned, cars. I mean, just, that night when we got back to the hotel, we all kind of just sat there and looked at one another, and we couldn't believe it, what we saw, everything that happened, the police, their attitude towards the community, as if we killed George Floyd, right? That was the posture that they were taking. And the community, the courageousness of young people. I saw young Muslim women out there, right, who were fully dressed in hijab. They were out there praying with protesters. I saw white people crying with babies, running in the street. I saw Black people, Black young people, Black elders. Everybody was in the street. Everybody was in the street. And when I woke up in the morning and I saw how the news shifted from George Floyd was murdered to the rioters, the looters, they're burning it down. It shifted so quick overnight. It was almost like George Floyd's murder was a background story. And the main thing that all the media wanted to focus on was the town burning. And they had a bunch of Black people who were coming up on the news, one behind the other, to defend, corporations, to denounce those people who they call the rioters. They always find those of us who are willing to speak against our own people, knowing that what we saw happening, if in fact much of it I watched and saw, and we saw the footage that came out later, we know for sure that there were infiltrators out there who were not people really down with the movement that was setting fires. We know that. We learned it. We saw the photos of the white man who was walking with the long coat, that he went to the auto zone, and people walked up to him. Some of the young people walked up to him when they saw him trying to set the fire, and they asked him, "Who are you? Why are you here?" And he ran off because he knew he could not answer because he wasn't with the movement. So we know that, and that's nothing new. That's always been the case. But of course, there was some of our own who were out there as well. And we know good and damn well that those people who were out there were angry, frustrated, and in pain and trauma. We know that. That never came up in the media footage that I saw that morning. Even the Black folks that they hired, because that's what I call them, to go out and denounce us, not one of them took the time to talk about the trauma. They all went on the media to say, we know this was bad, but the way in which it's being handled, I don't agree with. I wasn't going to be that leader. That wasn't going to be my voice. And I took pride in the fact that as a Black woman, I was going to go and say what I knew Black folks needed to hear. And I knew there was an audience who was looking for someone to step to a microphone and talk about the trauma, talk about the pain. And so I took the chance of just saying the truth. And all the new Target, they tried to burn down Target. They were trying to do, and I said, I don't really give a damn if they burn down Target, because Target can rebuild, but you can never bring back the life of a Black man. You can never. And so I don't know what happened, but y'all came by the millions, the droves came of people that came in who said, say that, exactly that. Please say that to us. Say that for us. Say that on behalf of us. It wasn't me speaking. God literally took over and became my mouth and said the words. And look at what happened from there. Yeah. From there, I believe that America stopped. And people who were trying to find a way to condemn protesters, young people, all of that, Black people, they sat back and said, enough's been enough. It's just too much. We got a young woman shot in her home. She was in her bed. Now 8 bullets in her body. She's dead in the hallway. And the police sent her mother back and forth to the hospital 3 times before they told her that her child was dead. And then on the other side, we've got a young man running who was admiring a home. And 3 men hunted him and blew his body to pieces. And now we're watching an officer kneel in the neck and intentionally apply pressure to kill this man while he called for his mother. It's way too much.
Too much.
So that's from my perspective, somebody had to say it. And I'm glad to see that so many organizations, so many people have benefited at this point from those words that did shift the culture. There's some people, and I'm sorry, I know you want to, this is an important point. 2 weeks ago or last week, they announced that Black Lives Matter, the organization, has raised $90 million. Wow. And people were like, you know, like, exactly, wow. I said, wow. I mean, and I say the organization, I'm not a part of the organization. I did not raise anywhere close to $90 million, not even a fraction. But they did raise that money. Obviously, the slogan is something that is easy for people when they hear it. They
Right.
know, go find it, look it up, click and send your money. And that's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
But I want people to understand that $90 million is nothing to fight what it is that we're up against. We're
Mm.
fighting the damn government, okay?
Mhm.
We're fighting structures and principalities. We are
Yes.
fighting corporations, as you used the word capitalism earlier. These are people who print the money. Okay, they're the ones who make the money. They have billions and billions and billions of dollars to hold, to do campaigning, to control the media, which controls the minds. So when you have $90 million, yes, it's a great thing. And you know, we know how to take a little and make a whole lot. But what is required in order to create an arsenal that can battle white supremacy? $90 million is not enough to get us there.
Wow.
So however people are funding this movement at this point, it's not enough.
100% agree with that. Thank you so much for saying that. I mean, yes, you know, it's funny you were talking about how the story had quickly shifted around George Floyd to kind of speak to what people were seeing in terms of the violence and the sort in the streets. But it brings me to a thought about perception. You
Yeah.
know, I know I've always felt in this movement that perception is an underlying problem in what we're facing, because people just, they look at us, they look at our sons and automatically have these negative perceptions, cultural perceptions that are incorrect, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
right? um, and so I think this is a twofold question, actually. um, People have this perception of what social justice leaders should look like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that, you know, especially knowing you personally, um, you are not what some people perceive you to be. At least I don't see you that way. I see you as a very kind, and we've had some moments where you have shown me kindness that it just really touched me. um, you're very smart, obviously. You're hilarious. You've got a sharp sense of humor that I love. When we get down and we hang out, it's a good time all the time, right?
Every time.
But yeah, but they sometimes people don't expect you to be that way. They want to put you in a box as a social justice leader. They want to say, you know, well, Tamika, you should be like this. You shouldn't wear makeup like that. And why are you modeling the clothes that you have on? And, you know, things like that. And I'm like, why shouldn't she? This is her life. This is, you know, this is a part of her life. And you are more than just a social justice leader. Not just, but you are more than that. You're a mom, you're a voice, you're a woman, right? So, how does it make you feel sometimes when people try and put you in a box and they get on your social media, on your Instagram, telling you what they think that you should do?
Listen, you know, it's funny. The other night I was out at a club because Louisville, honey, they turns up in Louisville. So we had gone out and I was on live, and a person came on and said, "What is going on here at this time of night?" They said, "What are you doing? You're supposed to be, you know, you supposed to be." I hear that every day of my life. You're supposed to be. And I wrote back, you know, I'm just being 40. You know, I have one life, and I chose that. Well, it was chosen for me. Clearly, it was my destiny to be a part of this movement, but I don't get a second life. So I actually have to enjoy this one while also working, right? And the person wrote back, you know, I didn't think about it like that, you know, and I often have to challenge this idea that because I'm a social justice leader, an activist, an organizer, that there is this particular book that I'm supposed to follow. It's just not me, you know. And I learned I used to try to live that inauthentic life of hiding and, you know, and not being my true self. And I realized that people can see straight through it. You know, people can look right at you and they know that you're not being authentic. They know it. And I decided that I wanted my connection to my people to be based upon the idea that at least whether you love what I do or not, whether you agree with me or not, the one thing you're going to have to do is always say, I know who she really is, right? And I know that even if I don't agree with her, I believe that she's doing this because she truly, truly, truly believes in this work, right? And loves Black people. That's what I wanted. I didn't want that at some point in my life, you guys find there's like a wall pulled back and you're like, oh my God, Lord have mercy, she twerks. I'm like, yep, I twerk and work. I twerk and work. I can do both things.
This I know.
Yeah, I'm like, Black women have always been able to multitask, and I'm a great multitasker.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to being on the ground, organizing communities, I don't know many other people who are as committed or more committed than me and my team. And
True.
so you take it or leave it. And the real thing is, I really don't give a damn either way. Like, you don't have to like me. It's cool. You really don't, because this is my little life. You know what I'm saying? One day my life will be over. I'll be, sitting in my sunset. And I don't want to look back and say that I didn't enjoy or that I spent my entire life being a fraud. That's
Right.
not what I want for myself.
Right.
And I know too many people that live their lives that way and they're not really happy.
Right. No, I understand that. I feel you on that. I know the time is short, but as we're talking about continuing to talk about perceptions and living authentically, we share a couple of things in common. One of the things is that we both have young men in our lives, right? And my son is 23, and your son is about to be 22. And at this age, I'm sure people look at them and just, have their own perceptions. My son has locks like me, and I'm sure people kind of look at him like, oh, who's this kid walking around with locks like that? And, but they don't know my son. They don't know who he is to me. They don't know how special he is. What would you like to share with the world that they don't know about your son that makes him special?
Well, one thing is he's his mother's best friend. For real. We grew up together. His father was murdered. It was just he and I. And, while I have had very strong relationships that he has benefited from, it's
Mm-hmm.
nothing like having your biological parents in your life. And, as he got older, I began to see the whole of his father not being present. I could see it. It became more apparent when he was little. There was my dad, and I was in a relationship, and uncles, and everyone was around. And so I don't think he recognized it as much. And I thought as time went on, it would get better. But instead, as he got older, he began to yearn for his father even more. And we've
Mm-hmm.
struggled a lot as a result of it. But aside from him being my best friend, he also is my sounding board for this work.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be like, "Ma, that is so corny. Don't say it, don't wear it, don't do it. It's not gonna work." And he'll listen to me, like if I'm practicing something, he'll be like, "You need to start all over again because those words are not cool. Nobody, who are you talking to?" He always asks me, "What's your audience?" Because I know you don't think you're talking to young folks with that stuff that you're saying. That stuff sounds like something that my grandmother, and he's very, 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 very brutally honest about what he thinks.
Right.
Every single time that he's told me, it has made the difference. It's been the
Wow.
difference. So I always say that the people who are closest to the problem have to be at the center of the solutions, right? That the most marginalized people, those who are considered to be at the bottom, if you will. Jesse Jackson says it's not the bottom, it's the foundation. Reverend Jesse Jackson says it's not the bottom, it's the foundation. And I think that's the message for me with my son. He's closest to the problem as a young Black man living in America, but he actually is the foundation of this nation. And that makes him a sounding board for me because he knows how to articulate the pain that his generation and Black men for far too long are feeling. So when you see me show up, know that between my son, the ancestors, and the team of amazing people that's around me, I'm not one voice. I come as a voice of from many, and I also come with a very unique understanding of the true issues that our people are facing through the lens of a 22 now, almost 22-year-old Black man.
Yeah. So you've told me that he's your sounding board. You've shared what it's like to be his mom and what it's like for the expectations that society puts on you. How do you balance, that act between being a mom and being this like highly visible freedom fighter? How do you
We,
create that
we
balance?
don't balance it well. My entire team, that's something we're, one day, maybe one day we'll figure it out.
Right.
And when we do, I'm sure we'll get like a Nobel Peace Prize for being able to come up with the one thing that the entire world, I think, is looking for, which is how do you balance? There's no such thing. It's just some days you give it. Some days I give him more, and most days I don't. Most days I don't give him enough. He has suffered a lot as I work to alleviate the suffering of others. My son has taken the hardest blow, for sure. But I will say that, my faith is so strong, and I do believe that God will always find the village that you need, or put the village you need together to help you follow his work and his mission. And only because only because I try to do the selfless work of showing up for others, my son, by the grace of God, is doing wonderful, you know.
Amen. So to kind of close us out, you've got a bunch of moms here and others, supporters, right, listening to this conversation. And I think a lot of moms often question, I know I do, because like you, my son and my kids have kind of sometimes taken the back burner to the work that I do, and I feel guilty for it sometimes. But there are other moms who just want to step up. They want to step up in a major way. So what advice can you give these moms to who want to participate in the movement, who want to show up and really be a change maker? What
Yeah.
advice can you give them for how to move forward and how to try to live this life of being a change agent and a mom, a provider?
All I can say is that we as moms, and especially Black women who again take a little and make a lot, we're the best organizers in the world. No one can organize the way that a mother can organize children, family, job, responsibilities, and be broken with stress and trauma and being tired and still look good. No one else can do it. Their dads love them, but I don't believe that they can take on all that we deal with and still show up looking good. It's just it's too much for us. So I know it's too much for others, right?
Yeah.
But there's something unique that God has given us as moms, that we're already natural organizers. We are naturally activists. We are advocates for our children. What we have to do is take those same skills and apply it to this movement, to social justice work. Find your spot. It doesn't mean that your activism is going to look like mine. It doesn't mean you have to run to the front line. No, don't quit your job, because we need your money also,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Don't quit your job. We're not, and if you can, that's great, but that's not, that we go from one extreme all the way to the next, and we don't
Yeah.
stop at the in between, right? So I think the message for all of us right now is that as women, there's so many issues that's happening to our people, and so many of us are either too afraid, not motivated, or just um, confused, and not really knowing how to get in. So we're like waiting at the line to get in the double dutch game. We're just, at some point you got to jump.
Jump in.
You got to jump in, and you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You'll get a groove. And guess what? The people turning the ropes, they'll figure out your groove.
Right.
They'll know
Right.
if you can go faster. They'll know if you can go, if you need it
Slow it
slower,
down.
they will figure
Yeah.
it out. And together we get in the groove. But
Yeah.
none of us can do it if we don't jump. So my suggestion is find a spot and jump.
Jump in.
And eventually it'll all work out.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. I really encourage people to support Until Freedom, support Tamika D. Mallory, support Mob United. Help us protect them, not just our Black boys, but our Black children, period.
Right.
Help us to bring the next generation forward with all the tools that they need to not just survive, but to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Love to you all.
Love you, honey. Take care.